The morning rush inside the downtown cafe moved like a storm, all noise and motion. But in the middle of it stood a young deaf woman named Ariba who felt every second of the world's impatience pressing against her. She clutched her small notebook, her fingers trembling slightly, and tried to communicate her simple order to the barista who couldn't understand her written words, who kept looking past her, who kept misunderstanding the gestures she had rehearsed again and again in front of her bathroom mirror. Behind her, customers sighed. Someone tapped a foot loudly. Someone muttered that she should hurry up. And there she remained, trapped in a moment where the world demanded speed, while her world required patience. In that tightening circle of frustration, embarrassment, and loneliness, she lowered her gaze, wondering if kindness had simply run out for her today. If you believe that kindness and second chances still matter, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps us spread more true, heartfelt stories just like this. Ariba had lived with hearing loss since childhood. Over the years, she had built a life with quiet resilience, a small apartment, a remote job in graphic design, a world of colors and symbols that felt safer than people. But mornings like this always reminded her of the one place she couldn't run from: human interaction. The cafe had become her ritual, a brave step into a hearing world that rarely slowed down for her. Most days she managed, but today felt heavier. Today, she felt invisible. She tried again to show her notebook. The barista nodded vaguely but still prepared the wrong drink, and Ariba's heart dipped in that familiar ache, the feeling of being misunderstood even when she tried so hard to be clear. As she stepped aside, unsure how to fix the mix-up without causing another scene, she pulled her scarf tighter around her shoulders. It wasn't about the coffee. It was about exhaustion, years of explaining herself, of being patient with others who weren't patient with her, of shrinking into the background whenever life moved too loud, too fast. She blinked back the sting in her eyes, wishing she could disappear. Across the room, a man named Zayan had been watching the struggle from the moment she walked in. He stood with a small boy holding his hand, his 6-year-old son, Samir, who had been fidgeting with a book he carried everywhere. Zayan was a single father, doing his best to keep mornings gentle for his son after a year of upheaval following the loss of Samir's mother. They visited this cafe often, partly to build new routines, partly to make memories that didn't hurt. Zayan had learned patience the hardest way a person could, and the sight of Ariba's quiet struggle tugged something inside him that he couldn't ignore. He didn't know her story yet, but he recognized that look, the silent collapse of someone who had tried bravely for far too long. While others looked away, he gently squeezed his son's hand and stepped forward. He approached Ariba slowly, making sure not to startle her, and when she finally lifted her head, he met her eyes with the type of warmth that didn't require sound. Then, with a calmness that softened the edges of the room, he lifted his hands and began to sign. The moment froze. Ariba's widened eyes, the sudden stillness in her breath, the realization that someone finally understood her language. Her heart fluttered in disbelief. It had been months since anyone had spoken to her in sign language. Most of her life, she had been surrounded by people who tried but never fully understood. But here was a stranger signing to her clearly, gently, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As Zayan translated her order to the barista, the confusion melted away, and within moments the correct coffee was being prepared. Ariba watched the entire scene unfold like a miracle she hadn't dared to hope for. Zayan explained, through signs, that he had learned basic sign language because Samir used to struggle with verbal communication during early childhood, and sign had become their bridge. Though his son eventually spoke comfortably, they never forgot that quiet language of connection. Ariba felt something warm push against the heaviness in her chest, gratitude mixed with something she had nearly forgotten, the feeling of being seen. When she thanked him, her smile trembled with emotion, and for the first time that morning, the noise of the cafe faded. Over the next few minutes, their brief encounter stretched into soft, meaningful exchange. Ariba asked about Samir, who shyly showed her the small book he carried, and she noticed how Zayan always kept one hand subtly guiding his son, as if anchoring him to safety. She noticed the tiredness in his eyes too, faint but familiar, the look of someone fighting private battles while still trying to keep the world gentle for someone they loved. And somehow, that shared understanding made the moment feel deeper. Ariba took her coffee and moved to an empty table. She expected Zayan and Samir to return to their morning, but instead they sat at a nearby table, close enough that she didn't feel alone. She sipped the warm drink, feeling the comfort spread through her. She kept replaying the moment when he signed to her, the one moment that had pulled her back from sinking. She hadn't realized how lonely she had grown, how much she had retreated from trying, how heavy her silence had become. As she left the cafe, she glanced back and found Zayan watching her with a quiet smile. She returned it, a simple curved line of gratitude that said far more than words ever could. The days that followed carried unexpected brightness. Ariba found herself visiting the cafe more often, sometimes hopping to see them again, sometimes telling herself she wasn't hopping at all. And on the third visit, there they were, sitting at the same corner table, Samir waving his little book in excitement as soon as he spotted her. She felt an unfamiliar warmth in her stomach as she walked toward them. Their connection grew in soft, steady moments. Zayan would help her order. She would teach Samir new signs. They shared stories, hers told through expressive gestures and written notes, his told through gentle expressions and the ease he carried in listening. She learned more about his journey as a single father, about the loneliness he masked with strength, about the tender care guiding every decision he made for his son. He learned about her quiet victories, about the courage it took to move through a world that often forgot her challenges, about her love for art and colors that spoke louder than sound. These moments stitched themselves into something meaningful before either of them realized it. What began as a simple act of kindness began to feel like something the universe had planned long before they met. Ariba felt safer around them than she had with anyone in years. Zayan felt understood in ways he didn't expect. And Samir, he adored her with the innocent loyalty of a child who recognized goodness instinctively. As weeks passed, the cafe became more than a place for coffee. It became a small sanctuary where three souls discovered a gentle rhythm together. Ariba felt her confidence return. She signed more openly, smiled more freely, and found herself sketching again with a heart that felt lighter. Zayan felt hope soften the shadows of his life, and he often wondered if meeting her had been the quiet answer to prayers he